Welcome everybody. I appreciate you making time to watch this video right now. And I'm really excited to have somebody special with us tonight, Dr. Kim Roberts. And she's going to be talking about the science of brain health and exercise. And before we jump into that, I want to remind everybody that one of the mantras that we have here at Class 5 Mind is little actions done consistently lead to big results. And that's really what exercise is all about, right? Breaking down the muscles, building them back up, slowly getting in shape, one step after the other while you're jogging, or one stroke after the other while you're swimming, or getting the pedals to move up the hill. All these little things, they take little itty bitty steps. And here at Class 5 Mind, we believe that those little steps aren't just about our physical body, but really about the physical aspects of our brain. We're literally healing our brain as we go through our early stages of recovery. And as you can see from these pictures here on the left, we have a brain that's been experiencing a lot of damage from years of abuse, from substance abuse. And the pictures in the middle are actually electron microscope images of a neuron growing towards and outwards towards other neurons. So we have these connections that are being formed. And over on the right-hand side, you can see this beautiful symmetrical brain that has filled all those little holes, or what are referred to as holes, where you get good oxygen and good blood flow. And this is done over time. And the program that we put together here at Class 5 Mind is designed to do that. It's all science-based, with the type of things that we know can lead to results if they are practiced consistently. And consistency really is the key. And what we believe here is that with holistic recovery, you think about the entire person. It's not about just taking away the alcohol or the weed or whatever your crutch is. It's about replacing it with something great. Things like meditation and breath, emotional intelligence. So not only can you understand yourself better, but you can relate to other people better. Cognitive priming, being able to drown out all of those negative thoughts and put together something positive. How about some positive self-thought, some positive self-talk? That's always a good thing, right? Sleep and well-being. I tell you what, it feels great to get a good night's sleep. It feels amazing. And we know that sedation through drinking or through weed is not the same as getting a good night's sleep. And this is something that a lot of people struggle with, but over time, with consistency and working with the right experts and being able to put the time in and understand what's holding you back, sleep is obtainable. And today we're really going to be focusing a lot on brain health. And we have talked a lot about nutrition, but brain health and exercise really go hand in hand. So I'm super excited about having somebody with us today that influenced me very significantly early on in my career in psychology when I was a student at Sac State. I remember one of the first classes I ever took in neuroscience was taught by Dr. Kim Roberts, who we have here today. And she was the first person to introduce me to the term neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and form new connections. And when we're going through early recovery, we really are doing that. We're reorganizing what's going on up here. We're forming new connections at the physical level with our neurons. And that just blew me away, because for a long time, I thought of psychology as really being like a philosophy where there's a lot of theory, almost like borderline sociology. But then when I took the neuroscience class for the first time and I learned about all of these amazing things, the organs in our brain, the parts of our brain, how they interact, what neurotransmitters are, a lot of stuff clicked in my mind, and I was able to actually visualize for the first time a lot of the theory that I was learning about. So Dr. Roberts, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so excited about talking about two of my favorite topics, which is psychology and exercise. So I love how you're going to be bringing these things together, showing us how we can have this brain health, and then talking about how exercise can help people overcome addiction as well. And we'll kind of double click on some of those topics as we go from there. So with that introduction, the show is yours.
Thank you for having me, Joe. I love the brain too. I have plenty of models at my house. And today's topic is going to be about exercise and brain health. And Joe had mentioned neuroplasticity. I'm going to explain to you how exercise improves neuroplasticity. So let's get started. I do want to share with you some case studies Again, I know that Joe exercises and rewires his brain, and I think it's really important to understand the mechanism of action. So I want to start out to be more personal with some case studies. They include Mr. Pepper. He has Parkinson's disease, but he no longer has to take medication because he exercises. He's been able to rewire his brain. Michael Phelps has been diagnosed with ADHD when he was 8 years old. And instead of taking medication, his mom put him in a swim program. And we'll talk about his diagnosis. And then my friend Tina, this is a personal story. I knew she does Ironman. I met her on bike rides, and she's also an alcoholic. So I'm going to talk about her story and how she's overcome alcoholism. So let's start with Mr. Pepper. He was an older gentleman in his 50s when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And he started walking with his wife and slowly improved. So he no longer had a shuffling gait, a tremor at rest. And this was an indication that he was rewiring his brain. So I'm going to show you a little mini clip of his journey and how he actually improved. I'm not going to show all of it. So it's a very interesting story. And he's 81 now and still doesn't take medication for Parkinson's. Hopefully, Joe, you can hear it.
Without knowing anything about Parkinson's disease, John's PD journey began in 1963, just before he started his first business as a printer. As time moved on and his business grew, he and his family moved from Kimberley to Springs near to Johannesburg. His PD symptoms continued to slowly get worse. But none of these symptoms could have pointed to PD specifically. It was only when he started to shuffle that his GP realized what was happening to him. In 1992, his neurologist put him onto medication after diagnosis. But his symptoms continued to get worse. In 1994, he stopped going to the gym and joined Walk for Life, feeling dejected, and was only going to please his late wife, who also did the walking. To his complete surprise, his symptoms started to get better as the walking got faster and faster. The big surprise came in 1997, when he met one of his managers from the printing company. This man looked him up and down and said to him, "You're looking very well, John." And only then did he and his family realize that he had gotten a lot better. Here is John's walking story and how he managed to overcome most of his PD symptoms. This is John walking as he used to at the time of being diagnosed. Notice his posture, his shuffling gait, and his right arm that does not swing. You will also notice the blank expression on his face. Notice John's improved posture and the change in his facial expression. But his legs are still bent at the knees and he's not taking very long steps. His arms are still not swinging properly. In 1999, John had a back operation and immediately started his walking the day he left hospital. But he could not walk very fast due to the operation. He then had time to study why he was not walking properly. He notices that his left foot is not supporting his body weight. With the result, his right leg comes down prematurely on the ground, making it look as if he's limping. Having noticed that he's not carrying his body weight on the toes of his left foot, he sees that he's doing it properly on his right foot. He immediately tries to consciously carry his body weight on the toes of his left foot, and it works properly straight away. Notice that when he does this, his right leg is able to straighten out and take a full step, and his limp disappears, but his arms are still not swinging. Having realized that he was able to consciously control his posture and the way he walks, John's walking is much smoother, and he's
Okay, I'll end it there. So John was able, and he still walks like this today. He's 81 years old. He was able to rewire his brain. And how he did that, he started walking up to 15 miles a week, not a day. So it doesn't take that much exercise. He initially was on L-Dopa, which is given for Parkinson's patients. And then immediately when he started walking more and more, his shuffling gait became better. He improved his walking and his movement of both his left and right arms. And again, he's still Parkinson's symptom free without medication. So this is one story about how exercise improved neuroplasticity. Another one that's exciting is about Michael Phelps. Most of you, if you're a swimmer, know he's an Olympian, the 7 gold medals. And his story is that he was diagnosed when he was young with ADHD at 8 years old. His mother refused to put him on stimulants, Ritalin, Adderall, because they're basically amphetamines. And she decided instead to sign him up for a swim program, because swimming is usually an intense program where they swim at least 5 days a week. And here's his story about how he overcame his diagnosis with ADHD.
What's up, guys? I'm Michael Phelps. I'm an Olympic champion and I have ADHD. Growing up, I was somebody who was always constantly bouncing off the wall. I could never sit still. If I could go back in time and tell my younger self something, I would tell him to believe what's in his heart and never ever give up. That's something that I've lived with my whole entire life and will continue to live with. It's been something that's changed my life since the beginning. I think the biggest thing for me, once I found that it was okay to talk to somebody and seek help, I think that's something that has changed my life forever, and now I'm able to live life to its fullest. I had kids who, we were all in the same class, and teachers would treat them differently than they would treat me. I had a teacher tell me that I would never amount to anything and I would never be successful. So it was a challenge and it was a struggle, but for me, it was something I'm thankful happened, and I'm thankful that I am how I am. I look at myself every day and I'm so proud and so happy of who I am and who I've been able to become.
All right. So just to explain how this exercise would improve his symptoms, this is a normal child, a lot of brain activity here with the red, a lot of glucose. What happens with the brain of somebody with ADHD is that they're not overstimulated, their brain's actually understimulated. So exercise is going to stimulate his brain so he isn't bouncing off the walls. Instead of giving him amphetamines and saying, here, take a drug for your symptoms, he exercised and improved his symptoms. So, and the last case I wanted to share with you is Tina. Tina is an amazing woman. She's done Ironman in Kona, Hawaii 6 times. And for those who don't know what that is, it is basically a swim of 2.4 miles, a 110-mile bike ride, and a marathon all in one day. So I have some crazy friends that actually do that and race it. And so I wanted to know, did exercise make her stop drinking? So she told me, I interviewed her when I asked, when did you start drinking? And she said, at the age of 13 through 18, mostly on the weekends, also times during the week and during school. I went for my first treatment at age 18 after graduating from high school, and I dropped out of college. I joined the military in August and got sober, and it sobered me up and has lasted since 1998. So I asked her, was it exercise? And she said, well, exercising did not help me stop drinking per se. However, it's kept me sober. And that's important. I think it has helped me stay sober as a large piece of my life. It fulfills me. And also you get the good neurotransmitters from exercising, such as endorphins and dopamine and a little serotonin. So obviously it's going to help with recovery. And so Tina is in Hawaii right now, again, still training. So all these stories and all these case studies tell me a couple of things. They utilized exercise to overcome their diagnosis. And that's really, really important, because that's telling me it's rewiring their brain. So their behavior, your behavior really influences your brain, and it makes you rewire your brain. And as the saying goes, nobody gets better by sitting on the couch. So those days that we do want to sit on the couch, remind yourself exercising will improve brain health. Okay, so what is it? What does what's a mechanism of action? So if you go exercise, what's happening to facilitate this brain rewiring? And the answers researchers have is it increases a chemical called brain-derived nerve growth factor, BDNF. Okay, think of this chemical as a catalyst to basically improve cell growth. It grows neurons, especially in the hippocampus, and where we have memory and learning. So it's so important. But remember, it has to be aerobic exercise. It cannot be things like lifting weights. Everyone should lift weights. You know, it's good for your muscles. But you have to do aerobic exercise to have an increase in brain-derived growth factor. And this has been established in the literature for quite some time. And when I heard about this, I was really excited, because this was solidifying that you can rewire your brain. There's neuroplasticity in the brain. And all of this together is really telling us something that we can do without taking pills. We can rewire our brain without medication. And it really started in the 1990s with Fred Gage at the Salk Institute. He was studying mice, and he had a group that would have a running well, you know, run every day, and a control group in a cage for about 6 weeks. And what he found, that the physically fit mice had double the number of new nerve cells, not old, but new in the same region of the hippocampus. And they learned to actually perform better, outperform the non-runners in a task like the water maze. They actually improved and could run the water maze a lot quicker than the control group. So this was telling the researchers there is something going on, that exercise, not only does it improve this brain nerve growth factor, but it also improves your ability to learn simple tasks. So what about middle age? So what if you're a middle-aged monkey? Are you going to have the same effect on your neurons? And this was a question Judy Cameron, a neuroscientist, asked. She goes, well, I see it in rats and mice. What about middle-aged monkeys? So what she did is train them to run a treadmill 1 hour each day for 5 months, okay? The control monkeys just sat on a treadmill. So they just sat and watched their colleagues, their peers exercise. And what she found, that monkeys that did exercise, they had improved memory skills, learning, and alertness. And she also found there was an increase in blood flow. And this is bringing more oxygen to the brain, and the formation of new blood vessels. So this was demonstrating that, again, exercise is really important for the brain. It's really important for that rewiring to occur. It's going to facilitate that. But what about middle-aged humans? Are they going to improve as much as middle-aged monkeys? So our Cameron and his colleagues in 2012, what they did is recruited older people, 55 to 80, and divided them into two groups. And these people were sedentary, so they weren't exercising like my friend Tina. So they exercised 40 minutes a day for 3 days a week, okay, for a total of 6 months. So they did aerobic exercise. So they could choose from walking, jogging, doing a track indoors, or cycling on a stationary bicycle. The second group had used weights, and they had balance exercises, and they did 6 to 10 repetitions per exercise. So they met 3 days a week for 40 minutes. And then after the exercise, so they did a brain scan pre and post the exercise of the treatment, and they found a 2% increase in the volume of the hippocampus compared to those who lifted weights. And this number is significant because we lose brain mass as we age. Unfortunately, it's kind of like lean muscle mass. We lose it for every decade. We start losing muscle mass. We start losing neurons too. And so it's important to establish that 2% is pretty significant. So this is the results. So you see in the exercise group here, there was a significant increase in the volume of the hippocampus, also improvement in the caudate nucleus, and that's important for movement and motor skills, also emotion and motivation. There was no difference in the thalamus, okay, in the brain regions in this study. So this was telling us that to exercise is going to improve your brain volume. It's going to improve your memory. It's going to improve your cognitive performance. But we also can't lose sight of the whole person. And what I mean by that, and this is some things Joe has talked about, is that exercise improves sleep quality. I'm giving a lecture on sleep in my class, and sleep, according to Matthew Walker, who wrote a book on it, is just as important as your diet. So you sleep better when you exercise. Your average resting heart rate is much better, beats per minute. Your uptake of oxygen, again, blood flow to the brain, that's going to prevent dementia. If you exercise, you're getting more oxygen to the brain. Your average daily calories, you can intake more, obviously, because your metabolism is going to increase. Your life expectancy, 4 years longer. So that's pretty significant, okay? So this is really, really important to start thinking about exercising. So it does improve brain health, and that usually the average is like 20 minutes a day. If you have 20 minutes, you walk 2 miles a day, 5 days a week, this is going to help your cardiovascular system, your blood flow to your brain, and it's going to improve that rewiring. It's going to improve that brain nerve growth factor, which we can actually measure after aerobic activity in the blood of subjects who engage in aerobic activity. So really, this is the catalyst. I'm hoping that, you know, someday that your general practitioner will tell you, no, you don't have to take Lipitor or a statin. Just start walking 2 miles a day, and you may see a difference. So hopefully, this holistic approach of exercising to improve mental health as well, because it increases your resilience, it improves your stress. Even when the days you don't want to go out there and exercise, think about how it's going to help improve your mood. I'll tell you, there's been times I come home, force myself to go exercise, and I'm like, God, I feel so much better. So but I wanted to share if I have time. Do I have time, Joe?
Yeah, please do. And then I have some follow-up questions for you on a few.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I go pretty fast. So I do research at the Wellness Center at CSUS and at the Cardiovascular Wellness. So I work with older 60 to 90 years old. And what we do is how exercise improves memory tasks and blood pressure, but we focused on memory in this group. So here's 2 of my participants, and what we found is if they exercise in a social group rather than being by themselves. So we took them, had them do a memory test after exercising in the social group. Then we took the bikes, put them in a room by themselves, and did a memory task, as you can see here on both conditions. And we did the young too. We did young college students, and we saw they improved in the social group, but it wasn't significant. But we saw a huge difference in the elderly, indicating being in a social group stimulates your brain, and then exercising stimulates it even more. So they're improving in their cognitive performance. So that's my research, and I'm continuing that because I truly believe in exercise and improving brain health. All right, Joe, I can't see anybody on chat.
No, that's great. I've got some questions I think are going to echo what some of the things that we've talked about in some of the past sessions that we've done. But first, I want to double click on this slide. So this is really interesting because you have 2 groups, the young and the old, and then the yellow is they worked out in a group, social,
Right.
and the other is they worked out alone.
Right.
So this is really interesting. So regardless of age, there still is a difference. Is this the memory test that we're seeing here?
Yes, it is. It is. And what's interesting is that just a 10-minute conversation facilitates those neurons. They say elderly people are declining in their cognitive ability because they live alone. They don't chit chat. And then I was thinking, having a conversation and exercising is like, more nerve growth factor for your brain. I can't prove that, but it facilitates it. And I think that with this whole pandemic, that's going to be a problem, not only for older people, but even for me and you. Talking to the computer is not the same as interacting, like seeing somebody. And, I don't know, I go to coffee a lot with my friends though. So I do get my social, my social outlet. We walk the dogs.
And in both of these cases, you tested people doing anaerobic exercise, right? Or I'm sorry,
aerobic. We did stationary bikes, all aerobic. Because I have done that, Joe. I did a study on, a control group and somebody on stationary bikes. And I demonstrated short-term memory improved with exercise. So yeah, it does.
Do you have to be learning the material while you're exercising, or can you study something and then go exercise, or maybe exercise and then study it? Like, what's the recommendation on that?
That is a good, yeah. So the research says that if you, they did this really interesting one with women learning language, and they were exercising while they were learning words in German or something like that, and it did improve their memory for that. So doing both, you can, or you can they did another study, Topolsky, where they read something, went for exercise, and then came back and they improved on their test performance rather than just sitting there. So they had one group just exercise, read something, exercise, one group just sat there, and the people who exercise improved their scores. So this goes with the theme here, is that nerve growth factor is gonna help you, if you exercise.
I love it. It's almost like, you're putting it in there, and then the exercise is just drilling it down even deeper to really reinforce it by putting the BBN on top.
And Dustin asked a good question. I see, how soon after starting aerobic exercise will you start to see and feel the benefit? Well, I think you would start at least probably 3rd or 4th day. I mean, I don't know, everyone's different, and depending on how intense you do it, I think with any exercise, if you're just beginning, I would start out slow, like have 1 mile and then walk 2 miles and just keep going, improving on that. So I feel like the benefits are, for some people, are immediate, but other people may take a while to feel like, you know, you're getting all the improvements that you need. But believe me, moving is, keep moving. I have a 90-year-old woman and she does a Stairmaster, and her cognitively, she's sharp. You know, I see these people and I'm like, I want to be like them. You know, so yeah, they're great. And I just see elderly people who do walk every day. They seem to be, you know, just feel better in general.
Yeah, they feel better, they look better. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. Can you go back to that slide that you had with the thalamus and the hypothalamus
Oh,
and the
sure.
caudate nucleus
Yeah.
on it? So could you
Yeah.
talk us through the like what the hippocampus is, what the caudate nucleus is, the thalamus, and then maybe relate that a little bit back to recovery, like how the hippocampus is damaged through years of alcohol or
Oh,
particularly
yeah,
marijuana
yeah.
abuse. Marijuana so typically
Yeah.
linked to memory.
Yes, that is true. So this is our relay station for learning and memory. So our short term, so this lecture is going in your short term memory. If you rehearse it and find it interesting, it'll go into long term memory, which is basically diffuse throughout. But what happens with taking even alcohol, like people have blackouts, etc., it blocks that information, or smoking will block any type of information getting into the hippocampus. So it's important to think about, you know, rewiring. You can get a better memory by, you know, exercising, because it increases nerve growth cells in here, in this region, so to speak. Now the caudate is a little more diffuse, meaning it's important in motor movements. So John Pepper, who you know, helped himself, was probably facilitating some neuron growth in this area to improve his Parkinson's. It's also important in motivation and emotion. So exercise will improve that. The least amount, so this wasn't significant. When we look at the thalamus is really a relay station. So information going into the brain, the thalamus kind of directs it to say, oh, this should be, if it's really a cognitive problem, it has to go to the frontal lobe. If it needs more auditory processing.
You know, you cut out there for a second.
Oh, did I?
So
sorry.
I heard you say that the thalamus is a relay station, and then
I cut out. Okay, so the thalamus is probably, here's the corpus callosum. It's right in there, right in the middle of your brain. It's part of the diencephalon. But really, when information comes into your brain, it relays it to the other parts for further analysis. So like if I give you a stats problem, Joe, you would be like, oh no, and you would go to your frontal lobe and say, I need to process this. I haven't had stats since, you know, 2004. So something like that. Does that make sense? Yeah, but there wasn't a lot of difference there, but yeah.
So the caudate nucleus one's kind of interesting when you think about emotion and motivation, because those are such intimately linked.
Yeah, and really an important area in motivation is, here's the thalamus, right underneath is the hypothalamus, and that's where we have a lot of dopamine containing neurons. And I have Dr. C, who was on my committee, was doing research with rats, and what he would have it in the hypothalamus, in particular the nucleus accumbens, and he was doing microdialysis. So he let the rat bar press for cocaine, and he was basically taking out, like infusing saline and taking out samples to see what's being released in this nucleus accumbens, and it was dopamine. So dopamine is what people, you know, use drugs for, or gamble, or anything that can be addictive. It's because it releases dopamine in the hypothalamus. That's really important when we talk about things like addiction, but even eating can do that. So even the process of eating is pleasurable, it can release that dopamine in the brain.
So by by introducing exercise and taking out the substances, you're still able to get that same level of satisfaction.
Yes.
Because you're
Yeah.
developing the caudate nucleus more than you would if you aren't exercising.
Right, right. And you're facilitating, stimulation in this area. So the hypothalamus, the caudate, all of those are really important and drive and help you become motivated. Even when you're depressed, if you go out and exercise, you're going to get benefits from that. You're going to release neurotransmitters that are going to help you. I can stress it enough. I've dealt with, even family members that are depressed. I'm like, go for a walk, get out of the house. It's a pandemic. And my mom, she's 80 something. And I'm like, go outside, go for a walk. Even I tell myself that, I go for a run. I'm like, okay, I can't do any computer stuff anymore. So, I mean, it's just, stimulating the brain is important. So,
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, here we are in end of October. The quarantines started back in March, April.
Oh, I know.
And the number of overdoses is higher than it's ever been. Depression rates, domestic violence, it's all through the roof right now because people are trapped and we're not seeing the same level of engagement that we have been.
Yeah, and it's not only that, it's the interactions with other humans and being outside and engaging in normal activities. Yeah. Someone would just wants to go to the movies, you just can't. You want to go listen to music. I love music. I love the concerts in the park. And it's like, that's all gone.
All gone. Yeah, my wife and I, we love going to the symphony together. And the crowd, I would say, is 75% older, much older. And I just feel so bad for those people because you can tell that this is a big event for them and they probably don't have a lot of other things going on. And even when they do go to the symphony, they'll probably be scared to go anyway.
Right, exactly. Like my mom had, she used to volunteer and she can't do that now. I mean, she has to stay home and, I would talk to her and she was getting bad. I go, Mom, try to go outside, do something. So yeah, it's really tough. And I think exercise really helps. The upswing of that, people who are selling bicycles have an upswing, especially around here. They're selling, because we have a lot of bike trails. So that's a good thing. People are exercising. They're out on the bike path, so it has helped a little bit.
Yeah, well, one of our clients who's on this presentation today just sent me a text that he did like 26 miles right before our group meeting on his bike. He's an avid mountain biker. So yeah, I mean, it's great. People are still out doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's important to do it. Yeah, now more than ever. So yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for about exercise.
What do you think that that Mr. Pepper one is really amazing because Parkinson in particular is often viewed as a death sentence, kind of like Alzheimer's.
No, it is. Yeah, it's progressive. Yeah, he's an amazing story. And he's it's rare to, be able to walk. You think of Michael Fox, the actor that had the stimulation. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Back
Michael
to
J.
the
Fox.
Future. Yeah. And anyway, he did the same. He has a stimulator so it's in the substantia nigra where you don't produce enough dopamine. And so if you stimulate that, you can reduce your motor tremor at rest and be able to walk. So he's doing pretty well. I think that it's basically mind over matter, and the fact you can rewire it. In fact, I have a book I'd share with everyone. And actually this guy, Norman Dodgy, I'll send you did I send you the link, Joe?
You did, and I already ordered it. It's on my desk.
Oh, you gotta, so he even talks about in his second volume of this, he talks about Pepper, in that he rewired his brain. But there's one doctor, Dr. Tubb, he's at the University of Alabama somewhere, and he was a med student, and his dad had a stroke. And he's like, how am I going to help my dad? He can't even walk. He can't eat by himself. I'm in med school. What can I do? And so what he had him do, he tied down his good hand so he could eat with this hand. His left hand, he couldn't. He took his right hand, made him go, put it on the back, and forced him to eat with his left hand. By 6 months later, he could walk. He could actually eat normal. He lost his paralysis because what they see is they rewire the brain. And now he has a clinic called constraint therapy. So if someone has a stroke, it's like boot camp. It's like, you cannot use your good hand because that won't rewire your brain. This one's damaged. I mean, they have to eat like this, but slowly they regain full mobility. So
Wow.
yeah, and that, when I read that, it's in this book here, there's a couple case studies like that. I'm like, it makes so much sense. I mean, just, you have to use it to rewire it.
Yeah.
Brain.
Yeah. And it's the little things done consistently that bring you big results.
Yeah. And it's not easy. It's not easy to watch people with a stroke, feed themselves, but you have to have them do it to get better. So it's like, yeah.
And I think you really have to have faith in the process too, because I know for a lot of people that are overcoming substance abuse, maybe they've been smoking pot since they were a teenager or drinking for 30, 40 years, and they feel like, hey, I'm a lost cause, or the longest I've been sober is only a couple weeks or a couple months.
Right.
Understanding that there's a physical aspect to this that's being repaired and then growing.
Right,
kind of
right.
like
You can,
this constraint therapy of saying, no, the past is done, and now you have a new way of doing things that you have to reinforce.
Yes,
and then get stronger and stronger with time.
You need to make it a good habit. That it's like, they say, some things can become a bad habit, as you know, and then some people, you could change that to a good habit, like exercise. Every time you think you want to, like, I could just, have a drink, sit on the couch, have a cocktail, or I could go run, feel better that way rather than substance. I'm just waiting for the day that, people say, I remember, Joe, I told you this story and I couldn't find the link, but this was years ago when I was teaching drugs and behavior, probably like 10. And this woman in New York got a group of, they were heroin addicts. And she goes, I'm going to make them do something. I'm going to make them train for a half marathon. So she started running, a running group with these set of guys. And sure enough, they all made it through a half marathon. They trained for it. They were kicking their habit, and it was like a success story. So it can be done. I mean, you can substitute, having some type of brain stimulation from, a good drug of exercising versus not.
Yeah.
And I look at my friend Tina, she doesn't drink, but she does exercise a lot, it's, she may, but it's a good thing. It's kept her sober. It's kept her, healthy and athletic, and something she loves to do. She's such a positive person. So I see that in her. Yeah.
Well, that's a great story, and it's a great use case. And I'm wondering if anybody has any other questions for Dr. Roberts before we let her drop. We're almost to the top of the hour, so we want to be respectful of her time too. Do you guys have any questions for her?
Yeah, I was wondering, you were saying 40 minutes is like a good time to know, because at first I was wondering, okay, yeah, what's like the optimal amount of time for exercise to help repair neuroplasticity, but also wondering if like intensity of exercise has much to do with that, and if you can expedite it through doing more intense exercise or anything like that.
That's a great question. I don't think you can expedite it. I don't know. And a study hasn't been done where they had people like run 5 miles and see brain-derived nerve growth factor in the blood, that would be a great study. I know that, you know, you should do like have 5 days a week of 40 minutes of exercise, and you will rewire your brain. You will produce that nerve growth factor. If in one bout of aerobic exercise for 40 minutes, you'll increase that level. Okay, so it will start to change, but you have to do it for, you know, at least a week or so to see really differences in cognitive function, like memory, like you remember your keys, or you just feel like you're learning and processing things better, you know. I know that when, you know, you're just setting, I said a lot more than I used to. I used to stand in the classroom, but I noticed that I'm not as quick, you know, as I was, but I do exercise. But that's a good question, Mark. Yeah, I think improvement after a week, you'll see it in cognitive functioning for sure. And just blood flow to the brain, it's going to really improve your endorphins, your dopamine, and things that makes you mentally feel better.
And you mentioned it being, did I hear you say like specifically aerobic activity in the 40 minutes?
Yeah. So the studies that the aerobic is better than lifting weights, you see more improvement. So with the brain-derived nerve growth factor, we see it with aerobic exercise, whether swimming, cycling, running, just lifting weights and doing yoga is not going to be the same for your brain. Yeah, so you want to get your heart rate up somehow. Yeah, that does help. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Any other questions?
What if you walk 18 holes of golf?
Yeah, that's good. That's aerobic. I mean, you got to walk. You should walk, not drive that little buggy thing. But that's fine. That's aerobic. I could go around taking blood samples for you guys. See if I don't have the assay kit, but it would be interesting to compare a golfer, a swimmer, and a runner. See who has the highest levels. That research hasn't been done, so
that could be a really interesting study.
It would be. Oh yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't been done. So
you should chase people around the golf course with a syringe and see how many volunteers are willing to give you some blood.
Yeah. Especially in COVID, that would be a really good idea. Everyone would be off the golf course. You guys have been fun though. Keep exercising.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your expertise.
Nice meeting you guys. Good luck. Go for a walk, run.